Hello and welcome to Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots. My name's Erika, and I really like to watch horror movies.
My name's Katy, and I really like to overanalyze things. What are we overanalyzing today?
Today, we are overanalyzing the original zombie film, the 1968 cult classic Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Katy, happy spooky season.
Happy spooky season!
We're recording this during spooky season.
Yes, because we're a bit behind.
We're a bit behind. We have been busy.
But we're here.
And excited to talk about ghouls.
Ghouls.
Yeah.
Not zombies.
They're not zombies.
Those things, as they say more often than anything else.
Things, yes. So, Katy, did you like this movie?
I did. I can understand why it took off. Even without, like I think it's a film that holds up. Even without the historical context of it being like sort of the first of its kind in a lot of different ways. And also in the way it resonated with the time that it came out. Like, I think it still packs a punch, if you will.
Even without its genre defining
Yeah.
and defying.
Yeah. I think as much since a lot of its horror doesn't really come from like the ghouls, the things themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like but somewhat more like just sort of the building tension or something, just like the atmosphere does so much in this film that it just like would work always.
Yeah, I can see how people, especially like a more modern audience, could find this movie very boring.
Or like slow maybe.
Slow, and like there's a lot of talking.
Yeah.
You know, rather than action.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big action and like, the end scene and, there's like moments of action.
Yeah, the car
between,
blows up.
But it is kind of a lot of listening to people talk and argue with each other. And I mean, if you're really invested in what they're saying, it's
this slow sort of amping up.
It's captivating.
Yeah. They are slowly starting to just sort of dig at each other. But
if what you're looking for is like more cars exploding, then this
or even
probably
just like, I don't know, more like scary visuals and jump scares. I don't know how much, like, people often bring up the little girl eating her dad as like a big scary moment that still works today, and I'm like, I don't know if that does still. I don't know. I feel like we see a lot of that shit now.
So that actually leads really beautifully into what I was thinking of. Like, there are some things that I think are still super effective in this film from a horror standpoint. I think it's still super effective, and I think it would have been super cool to be able to see it in like 1968, 1969, 1970, because we've found out that like this movie gets released like 3 times.
Yeah. It kind of keeps coming back like some sort of undead.
Yes, comes back from the dead. And so, like, as it's kind of starting to gain the following, it gains that popularity, and it gets released into theaters over, the late 60s and, like, the early 70s. And I probably would have been terrifying to see.
Yeah.
If I were, like, especially, like, a younger person in, like, 1969,
God.
It would have been freaking scary.
Well, just because it's so... I think people have talked about it being really just, like, hopeless.
Yeah.
Like... you've talked before about liking horror movies that don't
have a happy ending.
Yeah, where the villain wins or whatever, and this is definitely that, but not also, because it's not the monsters that win, it's just that our main character loses.
Exactly, yeah. Our protagonist loses, yeah.
So it's like even more hopeless, and even all the background stuff. I mean, we can talk about what we hear on the radio station and the TV, but like even the things they're talking about, it's like not really solutions so much as temporary fixes.
Yeah, delaying the inevitable.
So it's just kind of the sense of dread rather than like, scares, know?
Yeah, because I don't have the information in front of me, but I imagine this movie probably didn't have a huge budget.
Oh, no, it didn't.
No. So I see the way that they like use crafty camera work, and like smoke and mirrors type of things to, not to show that Ben is bludgeoning a ghoul to death without showing us Ben bludgeoning a ghoul to death. But I have to say that I thought when Barbara, who I can't wait to talk with you about,
I love Barbara.
When she finally gets into that farmhouse and she is scared because there's taxidermy on the walls, which is apparently horrifying.
Well, I mean, if you were already in a heightened state.
Yes. And then all of a sudden there was like a giant like buck head on
I would probably I jump very easily. I'm sure I would
when she finds who was like supposed to be the woman who was living in that farmhouse. Like
that's like never really explained.
No, that
what
she
happened
just
there.
looks like she's been overrun, she's dead on like the top of the stairs, the landing. I thought that was really effective, the way like that visual effect. And what really got me is right after the ghouls overrun their like their escape plan and like the car explodes, right? And the ghouls start eating Tom and Judy.
Oh, that part's that
was pretty. I thought it was really gross.
It was,
and I was like,
it was effectively done.
Yeah,
and like the reactions of the other characters was really effectively done.
Yeah.
I think I think there's a lot that this movie does right.
And I think one of the things to me that the movie does the most right is the very last scene.
Yeah, the last scene actually.
During the closing credits.
Yeah.
Chef kiss.
Oh, so like not even the last scene, but the closing credits.
The closing credits.
Yeah.
Are so good. I mean.
When it's just like the little photographs that look like.
Just the still photos. Yeah. The rest of
horrifying.
Pretty much everything after the ghouls take over the farmhouse is pretty chilling, but especially like the closing credits.
Yeah.
And like just the calm demeanor of the sheriff and his deputies, right?
They are the most terrifying part of this movie.
They kind of are, right?
Everything they do, I'm just like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And like just the use of the still, what really gets me is like the use of still images over the credits. Again, a way to like show the violence without showing the violence, you know? And like they show us these images. They show us the fact that like Ben has died and they're dragging him into the fire. They're building this bonfire. And then the very last thing is like some deputy or the sheriff himself, somebody. Like
they're all kind of interchangeable,
right? Striking a match and lighting the fire, and then it's over.
Yeah,
and then I wrote my notes. Wild, wild.
No, horrendous.
Yeah,
It's too real, I guess.
Too real.
Which I think is another big thing that this movie does so well is that like before a lot of like gothic horror and things like that, we're always had a lot of like Orientalist or somewhere far away or something. Like it's somewhere else.
Yeah, it's
or
over
these horrors
there.
are coming from somewhere else, even if they are here.
Yeah.
But this is like, no, we're here driving on this rural road
in
like
Pennsylvania.
Like we always do with the little, I love the little cemetery entrance sign that has the bullet holes in it. And it's like, oh yeah, this is rural America.
Yeah.
Here we are, you know? And it's just like, this is here. And like, this is us. I think at one point, Ramiro talks about, because we're going to talk about how they're not zombies. They're ghouls.
They're ghouls. Yep.
And I think Ramiro said at one point something like, yeah, to me, they were never zombies. They were our dead neighbors.
Yes.
And so just like, this idea that the danger is here and that this is our place. And that's all these things that this film does that are almost just like too close to the bone. Because this is really like all zombie films, as much as this is a precursor, I guess, to zombie films.
An ancestor.
Yeah. This is a film about like infection and invasion and like something coming. It's about like the permeability of the human body.
Yeah.
And I love how it's even reflected in like the home, where they have to spend so much time in this home with like all these different doors and windows that they have to keep trying to board up, and they can never board it up, And so it's
some
like
of
the
them
home,
are just staying in the cellar.
Yeah. So it's all just this like metaphor of these barricades that are gonna be broken through, and like the human body is gonna be infected, and it's just like it's all just too close to the bone.
Yeah.
That makes it really terrifying.
Yeah, and it still holds up in that way.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, maybe this is why this movie's in the MoMA.
Right, yeah.
This movie's in the Museum of Modern Art collection. Yeah. Because I think we were reading, I think this is just on the Wikipedia for this film, that like there was some goof. And like, so immediately once it was released, it just entered the public domain.
Yeah, it was something like he wanted it to be called Night of the Flesh Eaters or something like that. But there was another movie called The Flesh Eaters. So at the last moment, somebody else changed it.
Okay.
Like
to
not
Night
him.
of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, without realizing that the copyright was connected to the name
title.
Night of the Flesh Eaters. So then the copyright was like void or something.
Oh God.
I don't really get how that works.
I don't know.
But like, yeah, it was. Yeah. It was just like, oh, so you know.
So that makes sense as to why it is on almost every single streaming service.
Yeah, it is so easy to
like
watch.
sometimes we decide we're going to cover a movie and we can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
And
we have to shell out so much money.
Yeah, and then we have to pay like $3.99. But this one I was like, oh, I wonder where we can find it. And I was like, oh, it's on this one. Oh, it's also on this one. Oh, okay. I think we're gonna be fine. Yeah. So I mean, honestly, like, good for us, you know? Like that's
I know we should do more of
what a
shit.
silly goof, but also
and I think that's part of why it was able to sort of like perpetuate so much, you know, permeate through everything. Because people could do whatever they wanted with it. And like it was even like it's Romero and Russo? No, what's the other guy's name?
yeah, the screenplays by John Russo and George A. Romero.
Yep. Yeah. Romero and Russo, they like went different ways with the script. So there's like Russo has his like novels or something that are like Living Dead stories, and then Romero has his versions that are of the dead without the living part anymore, because they're like two different canons, but they can like coexist because it's like there'd be no reason for them to fight over the copyright. They never had it to begin with.
They never had one to begin with. Yeah.
So it's like kind of a cool thing.
Just, kind of nice in a way.
And then you could have like Shaun of the Dead and all this other shit because, and people could take these zombie ideas and run with them and not have to worry about like Romero or more likely some sort of upper level producer coming after them for like, and infringing on the ideas.
Asking for an exorbitant amount of money to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
So it made it easy for these specific zombies to keep existing.
So you said zombies. Super quick, I would just want to give a super mini eensy-beensy genre corner about zombies in film. So we've actually talked about this before.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, probably when we talked about Dracula? No. When would we have talked about this?
With the Deadites, because they were also
the Deadites talking about zombies. Oh yeah, and like to me, a Deadite is a little closer to demon.
Because it's more of a possession thing. Yeah.
Like with so many things, like with the slasher, there's so many like prototypes, and it's so hard to pin. Like, this is the first zombie movie. No, this is the first zombie movie. I learned that apparently there's a French film called Jacques.
Jacques.
I know. When I saw that, I was like, Katie loves to say that. It's a French film from 1919.
Ooh, yeah.
Where World War I soldiers who were killed in battle come back to life.
Okay, yeah.
So very zombie, right?
Yeah.
And then actually, we have some representations. We are using the word zombie in just right before the Hays Code in the early 1930s. That's in the Dracula episode. You want to learn about the Hays Code? Oh yeah,
that's definitely in the Drac episode.
Yeah, check out the Dracula episode. So,
or is it in the Cat People episode? Shit, it's in the Cat People episode.
Listen to both of them; they're both great.
They're great.
Yeah. If you haven't already. In 1932, our boy Bela Lugosi is in a film called White Zombie.
Right.
And there are a couple other movies that have the word zombie in them, but these kinds of zombies are the most traditional zombie, which is the zombie from Haitian folklore.
Yes.
Right. So in White Zombie, Bela Lugosi plays like an evil voodoo master. Yeah. And there is a lovely couple that is for some reason visiting Haiti in the 30s, and they're staying with like a rich plantation owner who, as my understanding, falls in love with the woman.
Okay.
And goes to Bela Lugosi's evil voodoo guy to be like, how do I get this woman to fall in love with me? And he's like, you don't, but you can make her a zombie, like make her drink this potion. And so that zombie, like, what's your understanding of that kind of zombie?
So my understanding is that would be more like kind of how we think of like hypnosis almost today. They do become sort of quote unquote undead in the fact that they like don't really have their own personality or identity or like control over themselves anymore. They're just sort of walking beings.
Yeah.
And they're like under control of whoever put them into this state. I think it would be more like if we try to compare it to any zombies that exist today, it would be almost more like the kind of mindless skeletons and zombies that are risen from the dead by like necromancers.
Oh, okay.
That are just sort of brought back to do something's bidding.
Right. Except for that these zombies are not dead people.
But they're not dead,
right.
which means they can be turned back. They can be saved.
That's true. Yeah. So like I understand very little about this, and I'm not Haitian, so but like the idea is that there is like a particular mix of herbs that can either be like blown into a person's face, or they could drink a potion with these herbs that would basically kind of render them almost sort of like, I want to use the word lobotomized. Like their frontal lobe is offline.
Yeah, just very suggestible.
Very suggestible at the whim of the person
Mind control,
yeah. At the whim of the person who has done this to them some way or another. So that's what White Zombie is. And then like there are some more.
And my understanding is that a lot of these early zombie movies come from a very like racial anxiety place.
No. It's super xenophobic.
Okay, yeah.
The like the racial aspect of it, the like, like
and the
who are
sphere
these
of, like,
Haitians and what are their weird beliefs?
And, and with like the plantation owner, the sphere of like the people that we have made slaves are now the ones who are going to enslave us.
It is worth noting that Haiti is the only country with a successful slave revolt.
Yes. Yeah. That does seem worth mentioning.
Seems apt. Anyway, so in that era, through the 30s and 40s, there are like, that's what zombies are. They're this like Haitian voodoo version of a zombie. So they're called like zombie/voodoo films, right? And then George A. Romero comes around in the late 60s, and then we get Night of the Living Dead, where I think it is worth noting that it is the recently deceased who come back to life, right? Which is why so many of them are wearing suits.
Right, yeah.
Because you think they're probably just laying in the morgue.
Yeah, right? And they all still look really like pretty, they don't look super decayed or anything.
Yeah, they're pretty.
Because I feel like some people have brought up, it's weird that the one that Barbara finds in the house isn't risen again, but like that body looks kind of like it doesn't have
far gone.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it has enough muscle to stand.
Yeah, so then, of course, like this idea of a deceased person coming back from the dead to wreak havoc on the living kind of, obviously, it just takes off like a shot.
Yeah, and for some reason gets associated with zombies, even though that's not what zombies ever were. And it does, when we get into my literary corner, does have some connection with what ghouls were. So
right. So, yeah, these are...
But the undead part is interesting.
The undead part is interesting. So do we want to talk about maybe like, I mean, we could talk about zombie movies forever, but like, let's, because this isn't a zombie movie.
Right. I kind of do want to just talk about what these things in this movie are.
So can we like, before we talk about any other characters, let's talk about these ghouls as a character.
Characters, yeah.
So since we're playing so much D&D these days, I couldn't help but think of like these ghouls by like their stats, right?
Oh, that's interesting, because I feel like my only connection really with ghouls that I could think of before this, and why I was like, well, they're different than zombies, is because of Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. I'm like, they have completely different stat blocks, exactly, completely different origins.
Exactly. So these ghouls, here's like basically what I understand these ghouls to be. They're on the slower side.
Yes,
they can't
not super
run.
Dexed.
Because that's a big thing in zombie.
Yeah, they're not supposed to run.
Zombie media now. Yeah. It's well, either are they fast or are they slow?
Oh, right, yeah, because they've started doing the fast zombies. Yeah, or started. They've been doing it for a while, I guess. But
so that's like a big question, like your ability to survive a zombie apocalypse. Well, are they fast or are they slow? Right. Yeah. So they're slow, but they're intelligent.
That's the thing that trips me out.
Yeah,
something that we don't really see with zombies today.
Not
like
at
we
all.
See them try to use try the door handles and then try to use tools. Like
the ghoul that attacks Barbara and Johnny picks up a rock to smash the car window. Like that is tool use.
Yeah, and they're like smart enough to know that like for whatever reason they don't like the light. I'm not sure if we ever get the reason why they don't like lights.
They don't like fire.
Right, but they also like purposely smash the truck headlights.
Oh, yeah. And
then they like flinch away from the fire. So they're also smart enough to know like it's like they have this weird almost self-preservation when it comes to light and fire.
Yeah.
But then like they also talk about how like I just smashed through them with my car and like they didn't even move. Like they didn't care. So it's like this weird like do they have self-preservation or don't they?
Yeah. They definitely have strength and constitution. Like they're like a ghoul overtook Johnny.
Yes.
Right? Like a grown man. Mm-hmm. That ghoul, who was also a grown man.
Right, yeah.
Overtakes him.
And what I find so interesting about that scene, too, because I'm like, what are these ghouls' motives? Because he overtakes Johnny, but he doesn't immediately stop to eat him. He then goes after Barbara.
Right.
And then I'm like, do they also communicate with each other? Because then somehow there are more.
They do start to group.
Yeah. And I'm like, is that just like pack behavior?
Yeah.
Or are they like somehow communicating with each other? They just naturally swarm?
Is like a ghoul over here because there are humans over there? And then other ghouls are like, oh, cool humans?
Yeah. Or is it just like, this is just near the cemetery, so the ghouls are going to already be around this area?
Well, and it's interesting in that like those first radio and TV broadcasts we get, which I love because they just sound so realistic, especially the TV broadcasts. I actually forgot for a second.
Yeah.
While watching one of them that I was watching Night of the Living Dead. I was just like, why am I watching this old news footage? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not real.
Was something about... Yeah, when they aired it in certain places where they put like little disclaimers on those parts because they didn't want like another War of the Worlds situation. Oh, yeah. They're like, we can't go through this again.
No. Well, yeah. So they have strength and they have constitution and they have intelligence. Not super charismatic.
Yeah. No.
And not very dexterous.
Not dexterous, yeah. And honestly, not like super intelligent, but intelligent enough.
They have tool use.
They've got like monkey intelligence.
That's insane to me.
Yeah.
And
they are thinking beings.
I'm wondering.
He even refers to them at one point being afraid, which is like, what? That's a feeling. That's an emotion.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it's interesting because I wonder if the strength comes from the fact that they're only recently deceased and they've been reanimated. Like they do still have all their muscles.
I think that's, because he also talks about them not being like, by he, I mean Ben, pretty much this whole time. Because he's the one who has most of the theories about what these things are and interact with them.
Carries that group.
He is the team leader.
If it were a group project,
he would be the only one getting the assignment done.
Yes, yep.
Oh my God. But he does talk about how like they're strong, but they're not like inhumanly strong.
Right, yeah.
But they do swarm, so it's like, they will be able to get through this car eventually or this house eventually because
get overtaken.
Because there are just so many of them. Like they're strong, but in the way that like I guess an unfeeling adult human man could be strong. You know?
I also wonder if because their organs, especially their brain, are still mostly intact. And like the way that you get rid of this ghoul is just like a normal way to kill a person. Like
but no, because like the bullets didn't do anything until it was a headshot. Right? Because that's where the whole zombie idea of the headshot being the only way to kill them comes from, is this movie.
Rule number 1, double tap.
Yeah.
Well, but also like,
because like the other bullets don't really.
When they talk to the sheriff, he's like, bludgeon him, set him on fire.
That's true.
Hit him in the head. They go down pretty easy.
That's true too.
And it's like, that's just how you kill a human.
Yeah.
Which then becomes interesting because as we're getting those radio and TV broadcasts, they're saying that there appears to be an epidemic of mass murder, which is absolutely fascinating.
Such good phrasing.
That they consider murder and violence to be the public health concern that it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, as a health teacher, I'm like, yes, oh my gosh.
Oh my God, if only we would recognize.
A lot of insight for the late 1960s. And the way that they, very Cold War, which, we'll talk about, the way they say, like, it's not easy you can't identify them.
Yeah.
They look like regular people.
They're just people walking around. And that's the thing, when we first see the first ghoul sort of shambling up to them in the cemetery, Barbara reacts like it's any man coming up to her in a cemetery, which is with a little bit of trepidation and fear because she's a young woman and there's a man and it's kind of a remote area.
Yeah.
But, she has her brother with her, so she just sort of politely...
Well, her brother's a dick.
We'll
talk about it.
I kind of like him, but he's a dick. I kind of like him.
Yeah.
But so she just sort of tries to politely go by him,
Yeah, she mentions when her and Ben are swapping their stories about how where they were when this shit went down. She's just like, I went to apologize to him because my brother was being a dick.
Yeah.
You know? And then he attacked me. She's like, he grabbed me. Yeah. And I'm like, that is actually pretty scary. You know?
Yeah, I mean, without that thing being a ghoul, like that is a thing that could happen to a young woman. So it's like, okay.
It is scary. Yeah. Like, grabbing at her clothes, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's also just worth mentioning super quick that we watched this on Max, right?
Yes.
That's the one streaming service we decided to watch this on, even though it's on almost all of them.
Yeah, I don't know why.
And I watch almost everything with closed captioning, and Max's closed captioning refers to these ghouls as zombies.
Interesting.
It says like zombies, groaning. Groaning. Groans and moans. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so that's calling them zombies. So yeah, it's like, what's up with these ghouls? Like, what are their motivations?
Yeah.
I'm wondering,
and then, like, their origins too.
how they get reanimated.
Yeah, because we get the weird stuff from the radio station and the TV once they get the TV going. That it's like a recent Explorer probe satellite sent to Venus that had radiation.
Yes.
When it came back, and like NASA destroyed it, but the radiation was so strong and like is now in the area and is causing mutations
all over the eastern third of the country.
Yeah, it's all east of the Mississippi River except in the extreme south of Texas.
Extreme south of Texas.
I was like, I don't know enough about geography to know if that's relevant.
Well, I mean,
or if that's just like the radiation just hit that way.
That's obviously like, I mean, that's the border with Mexico.
Yeah,
I don't know,
because it started in Gulfport, Mississippi. A family of 7 was slain.
Slain.
Yeah.
Good word.
And yeah. So then NASA's involved with this radiation stuff, and that, even bodies that have already been dead and bodies that are dying recently, like they're all coming back.
Yeah.
But it's not that zombie thing of like getting infected from getting bit. I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, well, that develops later.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens to Karen, the little girl.
Oh, yeah,
She's been bit.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
And then she dies. I wasn't thinking of those being connected.
And because she's been bit and she's not doing so hot.
Yeah.
And then she dies and then she comes back and then she kills her parents.
Right. Because it does seem like she has some sort of infection, like it's infected, and so she's dying because of it. But I didn't connect it to this zombie infection of once you get bit, you're going to turn and it's over.
Right. But what's up with that? That like it starts with a reanimated dead person.
Yeah.
Recently deceased.
Yeah.
So like they still have to have like most of their,
seems like that,
their body and their organs intact. And then their bite or scratch or something like then can infect and take over another person. Unless, of course, they take them over like Tom and Judy and just like devour them. Then there's nothing
in which
left
case
to
there's
become
nothing
a zombie.
left. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, how do they know the difference between them and not them?
Exactly. Like,
and we also see one of them eat a bug, so it's not like they only hunger for living human flesh.
That's true. Yeah, that lady zombie ghoul finds a bug on a tree and she like looks at it for a second and then eats it.
I saw that was the same actor that plays Mrs. Cooper, Helen.
What?
That's the same person, and not only that, but she's the one who did like all of the makeup.
Damn.
She did that makeup on herself.
Damn.
Yeah, because she was like she was the real life partner of the guy who plays her husband.
Oh, they're actually married in real life.
Well, I don't know if they were married, but they were a long-term couple.
They're partners. Okay. Yeah.
And then also like in the business, in the movie business together. And then the little girl is his actual daughter.
Wow. But not her daughter.
No, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it's like a little family affair, and they
That's cute.
Like, I guess because they were so strapped for cash on this movie.
How
they just
the
sort of
budget is,
they just grabbed people.
Yeah.
I think the guy who played Johnny was also like a behind the scenes guy, and like a bunch of them.
He's got some. He's credited somewhere else.
Yeah. Like a lot of them have. Yeah, the chick who plays Judy was like the secretary, and she was like, I could act.
How hard could it be?
Barbara, but like one of the side ladies.
Yeah.
Sure,
could be Linda. That's true. Barbara, like there are some. Barbara brings out the rag in a couple of scenes.
She's great. But we're getting off topic.
We're
talking about ghouls.
We are. Do we have anything else to say about these ghouls as a character? Do you want to tell us about ghouls some more in general, literarily?
Yes.
Literary corner ghouls.
Okay, so just want to say right off the bat that my main source, like almost all of the information I got for this literary corner, is from a 2009 article by Ahmed K. Al-Rawi.
Okay.
Called The Arabic Ghoul and Its Western Transformation. So I just wanted to let everybody know, citing the sources. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I did not realize somehow, even though the puzzle pieces were there and I could have put them together, I never put together. Ghouls are so fascinating to me now. I never put together that they're Arabic in origin.
They are.
They're Arabian. I don't. Yeah, like pre-Islamic Arabian mythology.
I have an understanding of what a ghoul is.
I would love to hear.
Now?
Sure.
Yes, because I remember it was a book in my elementary school library.
Yeah.
I used to I constantly have checked out, and it was literally just called Mythical Creatures.
Love it.
And it was like an encyclopedia of mythical creatures from all over the world.
Those are the best books.
And there was a ghoul. And I learned that ghouls, because I had my own little elementary school idea of what a ghoul was, that what they were originally were like specters or some kind of creature that lived out in the desert.
Yes.
And would like try to get travelers off their path.
Absolutely right.
Perhaps disguising themselves as a beautiful young lady.
Absolutely right on all counts.
Yes. To get them off their path and then be like, oh, come hang out with me. I'm a pretty lady in the desert. And then, nom, 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 nom.
Yeah.
And then eat them.
Yeah. No, the only thing I would add to that is that because these are like pre-Islamic Arabian myths, there are like various different versions.
Of course.
You know, even before they got like the introduction of Islam and then the migration of the myth into English speaking, you know, like even before all that, there's like just so many different versions of what ghouls are. But like that is the general idea of ghouls. They're often like hideous devils, but they can appear as beautiful women, though often they'll still have like an animalistic limb, like a hoof or something, you know, so something like that. So like, and yeah, they would like wait in like the desert or other secluded areas and just be like, hey, travelers, what's up?
I'm also a traveler.
I'm so beautiful. I'm just a damsel. And sometimes they would even like use the voice of like your sister or your mother or something, you know, somebody you know. Yeah. But like sometimes like it was unclear what they would do with the traveler. Sometimes they would just be like kind of luring you off your path to just get lost and die of your own whatever. And sometimes they'd be killing you kind of just 'cause. And then only
because they're evil.
Yeah. And then only sometimes would they be doing it to then eat you. So like the whole eating people thing, it wasn't necessarily like a main feature of ghouls. And in fact, sometimes they're even like friendly to humans and there are stories about them like marrying humans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, cause I mean, they're kind of like, well, it's like unclear. They're like, maybe they're connected to jinn, maybe they're devils, maybe they're their own thing altogether. But it's like they are just sort of like this whole class of things, so they can appear in different ways. But in terms of it coming into sort of like our Western understanding to the point that Romero could have specifically said, like, I wasn't thinking about zombies when I did this. I was thinking about ghouls.
Yeah.
That is what I was thinking of was ghouls. Like how that happened is that in like the early 1700s, there was this French guy, Antoine Galland, who made the first like Western translation of 1001 Nights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he brought the tales to France, and people have talked about it being more of like an adaptation than a translation.
Oh,
like he took some liberties, maybe you could say.
Because I have a copy of an English translated version of Tales of the Arabian Nights, and it sucks.
Well,
so if anybody out there has a suggestion of a good translation of the Tales of the Arabian Nights, I want to know.
I mean, I think part of the problem is that like a lot of these stories were only like kind of like oral stories, you know, or like, and there are like different versions that get written down in different places. And so there are some things about like maybe a lot of his versions, besides for the fact that he just sort of like deleted shit he didn't like and changed shit and like just added his own shit. He also just had a lot of like North African sources, like Turkish and things like that, Moroccan
Egyptian,
sources.
Moroccan,
Yeah, he had like a lot of those sources
Libyan, I bet.
that maybe just had like their own versions of the stories. So there is a story.
Just like literally everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So it's like that.
Yeah.
So we don't know where exactly this story came from because there's no like Arabic written version of this story, which doesn't mean that it wouldn't have existed maybe in oral traditions or that it wasn't just like a Moroccan version of a story, you know, but it could have just been Galand's own story that he just wanted to make himself, called The Story of Numan.
Okay.
About a man who inadvertently marries an enchantress.
Inadvertently.
Yes, Amina. And Amina is described as like only eating one little grain of rice at a time at dinner. And he's like, that's such a weird thing for my wife to do. I'm sure
strange.
It's not a problem at all. And then it turns out it's because she goes out at night and feasts with her friends, the ghouls. Okay. So like this is where the ghouls come in.
So she's ruining her appetite. Okay.
Yes. And so he sort of starts to describe the ghouls as like these beings from Arabic myths. And he like largely says what, they're like kind of devilish things and they lure travelers aside. But then he adds this important detail, which is that when ghouls can't find like human living prey to eat, they will lurk in graveyards and dig up human remains and eat those. Before anywhere else, this is where ghouls start to be associated with like the dead and cemeteries and things like that. And so this feature of ghouls is like not Arabic at all. Don't know where it came from. Might be North African. We don't know. But yeah, that's where it comes in. And then that idea, more than anything else about ghouls, is what gets picked up by English writers. And so like in 1782, there's a book called Vathek. It's supposed to be like the true story of a caliph of Arabia, so it's like very Orientalist, super racist. And it's just about this like greedy, cruel Arabian ruler who like wants power super bad. So he like turns his back on Islam and starts doing a bunch of sacrifices and shit. And there's like this part where he sacrifices 50 of his city's children and like lets a demon drink their blood or something,
Boy.
But the part with ghouls is that his mother happens to be very supportive of her son. So good on her, I guess.
Okay.
And like is also big on the sacrifice thing. Okay. And so she like specifically goes to a graveyard to try to make a pact with a bunch of ghouls.
Oh, okay.
And so this is where it becomes like...
Because that's a place where ghouls hang out.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where that idea leaves France and comes into England and other English-speaking countries, is specifically with this mom going to a graveyard and trying to talk to these ghouls and like feed it some fresh corpses. And of course, the story ends with this guy being damned to hell and his mom too. But yeah, so this is what people start to know about ghouls, is that they like hang out in cemeteries and eat the undead.
Yeah.
Or eat the dead, rather.
Eat the dead, yeah.
Which is what I was thinking about.
Eat the dead or?
Yeah, eat the dead.
Okay, got you.
Which is what I was thinking about in terms of D&D.
Yes.
Like, my understanding of ghouls is that they were people who, when they were living, like, engaged in cannibalism. And so then when they die, they come back as ghouls who, like, still hunger for human flesh and, like, bones and stuff. So, like, that is still sort of, like, what my mind associates them with, even though that wasn't what... So then we start seeing, like, this ghoul metaphor coming up in, like... works by Thomas More, Elizabeth Gaskell, the Bronte sisters. Like, they all start kind of just using ghouls as like a shorthand that people would just know of. Like, oh yeah, some sort of cemetery dwelling ghoul. Like, it just becomes obvious. And so even though this idea of ghouls like haunting graveyards and being associated with the dead and somehow kind of eventually becoming undead isn't part of that original story, it's what persists now in our mythology, to the point where even... like the opening of the Night of the Living Dead is all in a cemetery.
Yes.
And it's about this ghoul approaching these travelers, really, in this lonely area.
That's true. They've come a long way.
Yeah. And this ghoul hungers for their flesh. So I just think that was really interesting, the journey that the ghouls took and how they changed so much over time through adaptation, kind of in a weird way, then becoming... zombies.
Yeah.
Because then these ghouls were changed into zombies. So it's like, it's such a long train from these like weird spirits in the desert to like World War Z.
Right.
Like there's
and
no
the
comparison.
Dead.
Yeah. No. Like you can't really see them in each other
They're
anymore.
not even
but
close.
There's like these little connective tissues.
Yeah.
I don't know. I ended up being really fascinated by ghouls.
Well, and these connective tissues that go literally all over the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like, wow.
And it really only happened because of like perhaps faulty, but because of translations and like bringing these things from different cultures.
Right.
I don't know.
And a new pair of eyes deciding, we don't need that part.
Yeah.
My version of the story is not going to include that, and I'm going to add this in.
And then also later, New Pair's Eyes being like, I know he only called them things and ghouls, but...
they're zombies.
They're zombies. Yeah. We're going to just say that.
Sort of retroactive.
Yeah. It's interesting. People just sort of making their own decisions. And changing the whole mythos.
In conclusion, they are ghouls, not zombies.
Yeah, they are. I mean, yes, but also in terms of like the original ghoul mythology, you can like see it. You can see where he was coming from with it, but he also definitely put his own spin on it.
Yeah.
And added his own stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I saw was that he was very influenced by I Am Legend.
Yes. Yep.
Which are technically vampires, but not entirely what we think of as vampires. Yeah. So I think he was also drawing on that idea. So he kind of took ghouls, but in an I Am Legend way, and sort of put them in a blender.
Yeah. And made something new.
And made zombies, but not what was originally zombies.
This is kind of, to me, this is just confirming my thought that I want to talk about. I just feel like, I can't help but feel that George A. Romero just hit the jackpot.
Yeah, somehow.
You know?
Like, I don't think, I don't know how much of this stuff he realized he was doing as he was doing it.
My belief is minimal.
Minimal.
Yeah,
and that's, I think, what minimally. He said. Like, I think we're gearing up to talk about some of the history that sort of this film resonates with, I guess. I was going to say influences this film, but that's kind of hard to exactly say. But because he's even said, like, oh, no, I wasn't really thinking of those things when I wrote it. But
but you're living in the world in which these things are happening.
Yeah. So, like, even if you weren't thinking of them, like, were you thinking of them? Right. How much did it show up?
I think this is especially true when it comes to Romero's decision to cast Dwayne Jones as Ben.
Yeah. That story is interesting.
It's super interesting. So, what is, you tell it. What's the story?
My understanding. I mean, my understanding is that Romero and Russo writing the script, that like they were very much still developing the story as they were casting and filming it, and that like a lot of the dialogue and stuff was like improvised and in progress and stuff, you know. So, but like their original plan for our main character Ben was that he'd be like this average white guy trucker dude who was like kind
an everyman.
Kind of macho, not necessarily very smart. And then Dwayne Jones auditioned for whatever reason, like this theater actor guy. And just brought something to the role that they were not expecting. And we're like, oh, well, we should just cast this guy. It
has to be him.
He should be our leading guy, you know? And he brought like this intelligence to it that they weren't expecting. And importantly,
Ben is really smart.
It brought this race aspect to it that they had never intended. And they were like, wouldn't it be so hip and cool of us to just not rewrite the role at all? We wrote it as a white dude. Let's just have this black dude. Yeah, like, why would it change?
Yeah.
Though I think Dwayne Jones was like, could we maybe rethink some?
Like a couple of
like
things?
I don't know how I feel about this like super aggressive, angry black guy stereotype. Right, like, do I really need to hit this pretty blonde woman? And they're like, just hit the pretty blonde woman. It'll be fine.
Because Romero is like pretty well quoted as saying that like he did not intend to cast a black actor for Ben. And I believe him, right? And I think, he just got really lucky.
Well, because then that's the other thing with the ending, which is the thing that everybody talks about. It was the only thing I knew about this movie before watching it.
Yeah.
I wasn't even really clear on like what the monsters in it were, honestly, which, you know, is fair because are they ghouls? Are they zombies?
Are they zombies? What's
but
going on?
But I knew that the ending was that it was a big deal that it was a black lead character.
Huge deal.
And B, that he makes it through the whole thing, but then gets shot at the end by cops or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And it's more like a sheriff's posse.
A sheriff
whoever's.
And deputized
but still,
lights,
that was the thing that I knew about this movie because it's so reflected America, I guess. I mean, the times, I was going to say, but like it still reflects our times today. So it's weird to say it reflects the times. But like without them meaning to, there's stories about him like putting all of the film into his car and driving off to go try to find a producer for it or like a distributor for it. And then hearing on the radio that MLK just got shot. And it's like, maybe my film has messages in it.
Right. Yeah. It's so, because obviously there's like the racial politics of this movie are like still totally relevant, but like there is something about them that resonates as like
specifically
civil rights movement.
Yes.
Yeah. Race relations, you know, racial politics, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, there's some gender stuff in here, and then like,
absolutely.
And then, of course, it being 1968, like we've got like Cold War, Red Scare, space race, like, and then of course Vietnam, like all of this stuff, like is so like reflected in this movie. And again, I think it's just like really hit the jackpot and just like got lucky in completely encapsulating this moment, you know?
Yeah.
So do you want just like, let me give you just a super quick rundown of some of the like pretty big events that happened in American history in 1967 and 1968.
Yeah.
So
would love that.
In January of 1967, there's the tragedy of Apollo 1.
Ooh.
Where there's 3 astronauts and they die in a cabin fire in a pre-launch test.
Right.
The first crewed Apollo mission. In April of 1967, Martin Luther King delivers a speech beyond Vietnam, where he's publicly criticizing the U.S.'s role in Vietnam.
Yeah.
June of 1967 is Loving v. Virginia.
Whew, big deal, yeah.
Yeah, striking down laws that ban interracial marriage. Later that month, the Detroit riots begin.
Okay.
Which last for 5 days and lead to the deaths of about 43 people. One of the most destructive riots in U.S. history. In October of 1967, Thurgood Marshall becomes the first African-American justice of the Supreme Court. And also later that month, there's the March on the Pentagon. I think at the time, certainly one of the largest anti-Vietnam War protests.
Yeah.
100,000 people, more than 100,000 people gather in Washington, D.C. With some marching on the Pentagon. It's setting the scene of like everything that is important in like the U.S. political and social landscape at the time, right? In January, now we're in 1968. In January of 1968, the Tet Offensive happens, which is like this huge thing where the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, they attack on what is supposed to be an incredibly important Vietnamese holiday, Tet.
Oh, yes.
Right? Yeah. So they attack. The South Vietnamese were not expecting them to attack because it was Tet. Yeah. And like this is considered to, in like the U.S. public opinion, like the turning point of the Vietnam War becoming very unpopular. April of 1968, MLK is assassinated. In June of 1968, RFK is assassinated.
Oh, yeah.
Who was doing a lot of that civil rights work with people like MLK. And like also so many other people, right? Like the civil rights movement is massive. Of course, we only ever talk about MLK, but and then, so in June of 1968, RFK is assassinated. And then in August of 1968, we have the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, which has like a bunch of like protests and like police violence ends up breaking out, because of, people there protesting U.S. involvement in Vietnam, In November of 1968, Richard Nixon's elected.
Yeah.
Right. Which kind of... is like this, it is this like huge political shift to the right.
Right, yeah, this huge backlash.
From the rest of, the
everything
60s.
Else going on.
Yeah, kind of paving the way for Reagan to take over in the 80s for sure. And then it goes on, like shit goes down in 69 and 70 when, again, this film is being re-released.
Yeah.
We, over the course of, the rest of the 60s and in the early 70s, we get those like, iconic, infamous, what word should I use? Like some of the images that we still recognize from the Vietnam War.
Yes.
Like those are starting to come out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The public in the US is becoming more and more aware of what is happening in Vietnam. It's becoming harder to ignore race relations.
Yeah.
Right? The civil rights movement's picking up. Like this
and then women's lib now is starting to come.
Yeah. And women's lib is starting to come. Yeah. So it's nuts. There's a lot going on.
It was the time of it.
And that's just in the United States. So the rest of the world is doing stuff too. Like there are protests all over the world.
Right.
So that's just the US. So it is just this, just like catching lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. It's
amazing to me.
To talk about, I guess, the connections that we're making with these movies instead of just listing a bunch of historical events without connecting them, I guess. Obviously there's everything we were saying about Dwayne Jones being cast as the lead and how big that is. But there's also just the fact of him being like put in this position sort of against Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, Harry
Cooper, where it's so clear that this man doesn't want to listen to Ben or trust Ben's authority because he's black.
Yes.
That becomes such a subtext to this film that, again, wasn't intended when they wrote it. But becomes so clear.
I think also something about that is... the way Barbara, like, I can't wait to talk about Barbara.
Oh, yeah.
The way, like, she is kicking ass. And then the minute Ben shows up, she kind of falls apart.
She has that moment. Yeah.
And there's sort of like that, okay, well, if I'm a white lady in 1968, I've been socialized to believe that black people are dangerous, especially black men. And then all of a sudden, I'm alone in a strange farmhouse. I've been attacked. I don't know where my brother is.
Don't know what's going on at all.
And then a black man shows up. Like, that might just tip her over the edge.
I mean, we actually even get just sort of quietly in the background, the radio, because he's got the radio turned on, is saying things about like what you said about like these ghouls could look like anybody because it's recently deceased, and like don't trust anybody that you meet. Like right when Ben is trying to get Barbara to talk to him and like put on some shoes, and it's like, all the messages she's getting is to like not trust this guy. Yeah. And so like, I don't know, on the one hand you want to be like, Barbara, snap out of it. Yeah. But on the other hand, you're kind of like, well, she's already been through a fucking lot. She's been through it, yeah. And now she's in a room alone with some man she doesn't know. But then, then you get those racial tensions going on that just like adds this other layer that was never intended. That like really hits it.
And then, of course, there's every other character's insistence on calling Barbara a girl.
Yeah, they all call her a girl.
Like, she's a girl. She's a woman. She's grown.
Yeah, she seems grown to me.
But of course, once all these other characters meet her, that's when she kind of...
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
She goes within herself. She goes kind of almost catatonic.
Yeah, she goes into like a shock.
Yeah. Which I love... I think we talked about this in our Cloverfield episode. Yeah. I love the representation of fear that freezes you. Yeah. Because so often it's more exciting in a movie to have like either a fight response or a flee response. But like so often you just freeze up.
Many people would have a freeze response.
And so I actually kind of love to see it whenever we do. And we can talk about that more with Barbara because I just love so much that she's doing. But I mean, I think in general, not just with her, but with the other women too, the gender dynamics that are happening. Yeah. Like, we can talk about the Coopers' marriage.
Oh, sweet God. We will.
But just, like, generally how much they don't... There's the first line that got me, I think it was Harry talking about, like, they have these safe houses set up, you know, where we can get to.
Oh, yeah, the places they can go.
But he was like, how can we possibly get out of here? We've got a sick child and two women.
One who's... And then says something about Barbara being, like, out of her mind.
Yeah. It's like, how could we possibly go anywhere with two women? It's like, I don't know, you could maybe, like... And then it also really got me when it was, like... For some reason, when Ben and Tom were going to go try to get gas for the car, it was Harry's job to not only throw the Molotov cocktails from upstairs, but then also run downstairs to lock the door. And I'm like, you have other
people,
adults in this room. Okay, Barbara's kind of out of it.
Yeah.
And
use Helen.
Well, I think Helen was watching after their daughter.
Probably, yeah.
Or maybe Judy was. I don't remember which one. But one of those two women was available. She could lock a fucking door at least. Yeah. Like, why is this like...
And maybe even throw a Molotov cocktail.
Even. And then, like, we almost have this, like... Whoa, go Judy moment where she's like, I'm going to go help. Yes. And she like runs out the door before they lock it. God.
Yeah.
But then it's like, she doesn't do anything when she gets out there.
But she just puts herself in danger.
And then like her jacket gets caught. So then her and Tom are stuck in the car and that's how they died. It's like, really? That's what you want to say about the role of women in this?
Should we talk about these characters?
Yeah, I guess we should. I guess we already are.
So I think when we were kind of talking about, I feel like usually when we finish watching a movie, we kind of compare our notes on like what themes did we see coming up.
Out to us.
And of course, there's like a gazillion like social themes happening here.
Right, that we just covered.
I think we both agreed that really the biggest one is like this working together versus working alone. Communalism versus individualism. And like the way that it impacts the way like different characters value working together versus being able to work alone.
And it's even there with the ghouls as characters where like, sure, they're kind of scary when it's one by itself, but the really scary thing is that they swarm. Yeah.
And how that either working together or not working together impacts the group's ability to survive, which, spoiler, they don't.
They don't.
Yeah.
And they don't work together very well for, like we just said, the gender reasons and then the race reason of Harry. Like, I feel like Harry was written just sort of to be, like, a coward or something.
He is kind of a coward, yeah.
But then, like, with Ben being black, it just becomes like, oh, he's a coward and he's racist.
And he's fucking racist.
That's actually his motivation. Yeah. You know? So, like,
he's probably sexist, too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. So, like, it all adds to why.
Yeah.
he's like this individualist.
Right. Should we start by talking about Johnny and Barbara?
They are our opening pair.
They are our opening pair.
I love siblings in horror.
You do. A brother and a sister, especially.
Yes.
So, I say we talk about Johnny first because he's just not in this movie for very long.
No.
He
but
dies
what he
first.
does is interesting.
But wow, does he make an impact? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a dick. And I just he doesn't seem to have, what are his values?
I know, he's very cynical.
He doesn't take anything seriously.
What does Barbara say? I think you complain just to hear yourself talk.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
And no, yeah.
He has no sense of loyalty. He's
kind of though, because he still makes the choice to drive 3 hours.
That's true. He still does it. He just complains the whole time.
He just complains the whole time. So I'm you're still doing the thing. And he also complained, he spends that whole time kind of scaring his sister. They're coming to get you, Barbara. Taunting her and stuff. But the moment a ghoul tries to take her down, or just some guy, he will fight off that ghoul to the death. He'll protect his sister. He will do that. But the way he talks.
Yeah, I thought it was the dick move to me is how disrespectful he is to Barbara when she's praying in the cemetery.
Oh, yes.
Let her pray.
Yeah, he's praying's for church,
and it's okay, also, girl, do what you got to do. It's her dad, too.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
If she's got to pray, let her pray, and he's being a dick about it.
It seems maybe he has some religious issues of his own.
Yeah.
Because it's noted that he hasn't been to church in a while. And he's well, there's no point in me going.
Interesting that they bothered to mention in, the 10 minutes that Johnny has in this movie that he doesn't bother going to church.
And that he has the story about his granddad saying that he was damned already.
Yeah.
It's so this is a kid who when he was little, I guess, was told that he was damned no matter what. But why?
Is Johnny gay coded to you?
That's what I initially was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there isn't much to base that on.
No.
Other than
he's only in this movie for 10 minutes.
But that's sort of just those little things that we do have home are so religious trauma coded.
Yeah.
In that kind of growing up gay and closeted way.
Yeah.
Of well, what has the church ever done for me kind of thing, but the church doesn't want me, why would I want it?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And so, even talking about just his cynical outlook towards not just the church, but even the cemetery where he's oh, they probably clean up all these wreaths and resell them.
Yeah.
He's just very so cynical about
and
everything.
And also a little miserly, a little cheap,
But in a way that almost feels protective of himself.
Yeah.
I guess, but maybe that's reading more into him than is actually there.
I completely agree with you though.
Yeah.
He takes himself way too seriously.
Yeah.
And doesn't take anything else seriously at all.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that he dies first.
Yeah, but I also think when the chips were down, he protected his sister.
He did, yeah. And then
you could have seen this character being the sort of character who would just get scared and run.
Right.
And leave somebody to die. I mean, that's what Harry does, is sort of leave people to die, Johnny could have been that kind of character too, but he's not.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's true.
Though it also probably makes this difference that, Harry left somebody that he already didn't like to die, whereas Johnny, this is him and his sister. And of course he fights with his sister, but in the sibling way.
Yeah.
I think he loves his sister. So it's not the same, but he just could have, I don't know. He could have done less.
That's true. Yeah, but he is complaining the entire time. He's just we had to drive.
Yeah.
We're going to get home so late and Mom can't even come and I don't even remember this man.
Yeah.
And I'm well, you still fucking did it, dude.
I know. Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm kind of actions speak a little bit louder than words. You're being a dick about this. But I feel you're being a dick because you're with your sister and you know that you're allowed to be a dick when you're around your sister because she'll tolerate it.
And maybe he is complaining just to hear himself talk.
Yeah, because he's just had a 3-hour fucking drive through nowhere. He's bored.
Yeah.
Because
it's 68 and they just have the radio.
Yeah. So of course he's going to do things and try to kind of play games with his sister where he tries to scare her.
Uh-huh.
You're just fucking bored. I don't know. I feel in another world, I would have loved to get to know Johnny
a little bit better, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I do think it's really poignant that like you talked about with Barbara. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about Barbara and all of her I don't know. I just kind of want to real quick talk about her Ophelia vibes while we're still talking about Johnny.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Because...
So is Johnny Hamlet?
Ophelia has a brother, Laertes.
Oh, I forgot.
But more importantly, she has a father who dies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of when her descent into madness begins.
When her dad dies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just that idea of that Ophelia trope, I guess, of the pretty young woman who's gone insane, and so you like pity her, but you also pity like the waste of her like potential as like a pretty young woman who could have been somebody's wife or whatever,
mother,
that kind of thing. And just the loss of reality that she goes through, where it's like when she's retelling the story about what happened with Johnny and the ghoul, it's like the details don't exactly line up.
No.
And that might be because of the shooting schedule, and they hadn't figured out that scene yet.
Yeah, they're like, we don't know what's going to happen.
But also, it's just sort of like, because she sort of lost it, and then she even is like...
The main points are right, though.
Yeah, the main points are right, until she says, my brother is alone out there. We need to go save my brother. And Ben has to be like, your brother is dead. Yeah, like, you already told me this. Your brother is dead. Yeah. And she's like, no, my brother's not dead.
We have to wait for Johnny. We have to go out and look for him.
Yeah, and it's like, no, he's super... Yeah. And it's just very Ophelia giving out the flowers and like not really, sort of just losing the plot.
Yeah. Is that just her like part of her like shock response?
Yeah, she sort of is.
She kind of forgot.
She's like kind of rejecting that.
Yeah.
And compartmentalizing and just she's sort of going into her own place. And the thing where she snaps out of it.
Yeah.
Like you talk about, she has that sort of change where it's like when she first gets to the house, she's like she finds a knife.
Yes.
She's like ready to go.
Barbara makes such good choices.
She really does.
For being like the first woman in like something that I didn't mention in Genre Corner is that like while this is like an early zombie film, it's also an early splatter film.
Oh yeah.
So like for being the first woman in a in an early splatter film, like she has such good preservation skills, which Johnny does not have.
No,
she runs to that car and she locks herself in it. So smart.
And then she tries to drive it away.
She releases the e-brake so it'll go down the hill away from the ghoul. She runs to that farmhouse for cover and she immediately
looks for weapons.
She gets a knife.
Yeah. Yep. No. And then somebody else comes in and she's like, okay, cool. I don't need to be responsible for saving myself anymore.
I'm just gonna sit down.
Yeah. Like now I can just be the pretty, poor, pitiful thing and somebody else can save me. But then she snaps out of it when she sees that first ghoul that killed her brother. That's like when she starts to fight back.
The same one comes back.
Yeah. Yes. And like the whole house is getting sieged. So like it's a good time to snap out of it. Yeah. But it does seem to be like when she sees that one and then she loses it again because Johnny comes back as a ghoul.
Yes.
And then she doesn't even like try to fight him off. She just, I mean, she yells no a bunch.
Yeah.
But she doesn't protect herself or run away from it. Like all of that good preservation you were talking about is just gone because there's her brother killing her.
Yeah.
And she just like can't take it. It's so good.
It's so good. Yeah. Also, did you notice that original ghoul, the one in the cemetery?
Yeah.
That guy, that's like the corpse right next to Ben's on the bonfire before it goes up. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like,
good.
oh, that's good.
That's good.
It's a good little bow. Yeah.
God. And just his little shambling walk that guy has that has just that just created the zombie genre.
Right, yeah.
That walk.
Yeah, that guy. I have his name, actually. Hold on. Yes, Bill Heinzman.
Cheers to
Big ups to Bill. Yep.
Yeah, he brought it.
What else about Barbara?
Oh, I was just thinking of what you said about this being an early splatter film and her doing so good. I also saw some people talking about how this was like kind of a rare horror movie for the time and for the now times. That's just sort of like devoid of sex appeal.
There is a naked ghoul, but it's not
somehow
sexy.
It's not sexy. And like Barbara's character would have so easily been like the hot young thing or something, especially like in that kind of exploitation kind of film.
I'm thinking of Drew Barrymore in Scream.
Yeah, like she could have been that kind of thing, but she's like not, and she instead gets kind of like infantilized, but not in a sexy baby way.
Yeah. She definitely infantilized. Yeah. And I can see that because of her shock response and the way that she kind of does become she's talking, but then over the course of the movie she kind of is talking less, and when she's talking it's making less sense. Like kind of, and that way, like that is, I could see these people then infantilizing her.
Yeah,
she's like, well, she can't.
We have to take care of her. She can't take care of herself. She can't even put on shoes.
Yeah.
Which is weirdly a point to them. Yeah. You must put on shoes.
Does she run through the graveyard, the cemetery with shoes on, or?
I don't know when she loses her shoes. I think it's when she's first running away, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, where's she going to get shoes to put on?
Well, I guess just from the...
Maybe that lady
well, he does find some for her.
Oh, that's true.
Ben's such a sweetheart to her.
Yeah, and then, like, it's basically like she passes the baton to Ben of, like, okay, now you
can be competent now.
Figure it out.
I know,
and I'm done.
I'm not going to acknowledge the fact that you also just came from something horrific because the movie wasn't there with you.
Yeah,
so
the movie
it doesn't
opened with
count.
me and my brother. So.
And so I did my part. Your turn.
Yeah.
to figure out the rest of this shit.
And it is interesting because like Ben comes in and he does scare her because there's those ghouls, and all of a sudden like a car comes up and the lights are bright.
Yeah.
And then again, black man.
Yeah.
But he comes in and like he's got ideas.
Oh God.
He's like, we need gas, we need food. Here's how we can kill these things. We go find wood and let's board up the windows. Like he's got plans.
And he's like so determined to help her, even though like even before she's been able to say a word to him.
Yes.
Like, and he doesn't, like we were talking about with the individualism and the communalism.
Yeah.
This is where we first see it, where he's like, no, you are a person. You are a human in this world with me.
Yeah.
And there are monsters out there. So I am going to do what I can to help you.
Yeah. We have to work together. Yeah.
Yeah. And he eventually gets her to like get a little bit of wood.
She does pick up a little bit of wood.
And I was like, good job, Barbara.
Yes. And that, like, I also, as a teacher, resonate with that so greatly that I'm like, kid, like, what can I do to support you? I'm here for you. We are a team. I need you to do this. And they're like, sorry, can't swing it.
Yeah,
can't swing it.
If I just basically give you the answer, but rephrase it a bunch.
Yeah.
Can you get the answer? They're like, no, actually I can't. That'd be too much.
Okay, so these two people
just stare off into space.
It's literally like a mechanical thing. Like these two pieces of paper need to be stapled together.
Yes.
They can't even staple.
Yeah, it's like, could you not
together.
just? Oh my God, I'm giving you so much, and you won't pick up any of it.
Work with me.
And Ben is staying so quiet and calm and collected through it all.
He does snap. He does smack her.
But it's after she slaps him.
That's true. Yeah.
You know?
That's
it's like
true.
in response
Tensions are high.
Tensions are high.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm surprised. Like, I really did think that there was going to be more with the, like we said, with the radio in the background being like, don't trust anybody.
Yeah,
I thought that they were going to be set up to like be way worse with each other than they were. No. But that really doesn't happen until Harry shows up.
Until Harry ruins everything.
I think if it was just Ben and Barbara, they would have... I don't know if they would have gotten out of it. Yeah. But I think they would have done better.
They would probably. Well, and the thing is that, Ben, I think we were already talking about this when, talk about Romero casting Dwayne Jones, is like, he is like very self-confident.
Yeah.
And like,
He's very in charge of himself.
It's like that meme, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's like, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I like know what it's, and he does, like, he keeps his cool.
Yeah.
So it kind of is, the way that
he's like so rational about things.
Super rational, probably kind of turning some racial stereotypes on their head.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably why Romero thought it'd be so hip to keep it exactly as is, because it's like,
hip, perfect 1968 way of saying it.
That's literally what I saw in an interview with him.
That'd be hip. I'll be a cool cat if I do that. Like you were saying, he tells Barbara the only way they can get out of the situation is if they work together.
Yeah.
And then when Harry shows up, he refuses to do that.
Yeah.
And Ben is like, he's the idea man too. Like he is our protagonist. I know we start with Barbara and Johnny, but
no, he's our main character.
Ben's the guy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more like that Scream setup with Drew Barrymore, where it's like she's our first.
Except she doesn't die. But
she's our first introduction to what the danger is.
Yeah.
And then Ben is the one who's going to fight it.
So
even though the story he tells sounds like it would have been great,
awful.
But it's like also sounded more complicated to shoot.
Very much like there are way more people.
There was like a truck,
a restaurant, and trucks, and running over people.
Yeah, no. But he tells it so well, so it works that way.
Yeah, and like he's the one who comes up with the plan. Like he's the one who has the ideas. Like we'll get gas in the truck and we'll get everybody to a rescue station, which is interesting because that is what these like government officials on the news are telling them to do. And I was like, wow, you are trusting what your government is telling you to do right now.
I know, especially when you listen a little bit harder and you hear things about like, but some government officials are saying that they're already at risk of filling up. So it's like,
even so you better hurry.
Yeah. So it's like what I was saying before about like everything they're doing kind of like being these like temporary fixes. Mm-hmm. Like it's so hopeless because even the things that like are solving the day or whatever, like even that fucking sheriff's posse killing all the ghouls, it's like, well, that doesn't stop the ghoul epidemic. Now the next time somebody gets a heart attack, is he still going to rise as a ghoul?
Right. Or like, how long will it take for this
radiation? Radiation. Yeah. Like what kind of radiation is? Some radiation takes forever.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, it's all sort of like half measures or something, or like
I just wonder if they're just desperate enough that they're just gonna
try
anyway.
Anything. Yeah. I mean, that's also I think why Harry clings so much to staying in the cellar, even though there's no escape route out of the cellar if something happens.
To wait it out.
He's like, this is the safety that I can find right now, and this is the hope I have to cling to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm gonna hold on to it. And the movie is just sort of like, no hope for any of you, actually. Nope. Sorry.
You're all dead. Sorry.
You're all dead. Even if you got out of here, you would get to some sort of government facility and they wouldn't have room for you, or
they wouldn't let Ben in, maybe.
Or things would calm down eventually, but Barbara would be still in such a catatonic state that she'd be fucking institutionalized and lobotomized. Like none of this was going to end well for them.
No. So Ben does his damnedest.
The other thing about Ben, though, too, even with his rationality and stuff, and this goes to his like communalism, is that he's like actually really empathetic.
Yeah.
Like even though he like does hit Barbara at that one point, like he spends a lot of time trying to like talk to her like kind of softly and really like speak to her and like see things from other people's side and like relate to people. And like the big thing that he gives the people hiding in the cellar like a hard time about is that like, you heard Barbara up here screaming for help?
Yeah.
And you just let her keep screaming for help?
You heard a woman. Does he say woman or girl? I don't remember.
I wrote down ignoring a girl who was screaming to help, so that's probably what they said.
Yeah. And then, of course, Harry's like, well, I didn't know if it was one of those things, right?
Yeah, even though the things don't seem to make much noise.
No. And then I'm trying, help me remember, like, so Ben is like, and he's like so good at helping Barbara anticipate. He's like, I'm gonna go upstairs.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go like look for more resources. You stay here. Like anything happens, I'll be able to hear it, whatever. And then like, is that when Harry just comes out of the cellar?
I think so. I think he sees an opportunity
to come out of the cellar and be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then probably scares Barbara again, and that doesn't help her situation.
Somewhere around in there is when they find out about the TV upstairs and bring it downstairs, and that's like a big point of contention between Harry and Ben is like, well, if you want to stay in the cellar, you can't have the TV, so what the fuck you gonna do?
Oh my gosh, I love the little tete-a-tete between Ben and Henry, and how like you see them like try to like kind of masculinize. There it is. That's the one.
Emasculate.
That's the one that's
probably
actually
the
a word.
Yeah.
I did write demasculinize, and it says it's right.
Okay, I guess that sounds like a word.
But. Yeah. Each other like they kind of posture for power, and like, well, I'm right. I have the right idea.
Yeah.
And like and kind of show off how like smart they are.
Yeah, I love his wife's thing that she says to him about that.
Helen says to Harry?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Everything she says to Harry is amazing.
Yeah, when he's like complaining about having to argue with Ben about things. Yes. And she's like, and that's
a
important
young man
to be right when everyone else is wrong.
Yes.
Like that's really what matters right now. You just want to argue and be right and just like prove your authority over this guy. Because he's black.
Because he's black, yeah. he does say like a young guy, like he's young, and I'm like, it's not because he's young.
And we see you.
But what's great is that like they have these little like jabs at each other, and like Ben usually wins. And then like of course like when the farmhouse gets taken over, like Ben is the one to survive it.
Yeah.
And so I was taking note of like the dunks on Harry. Like everybody's just like fuck Harry, because he is like he totally is like that stereotypical like old white man.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. How old is he supposed to be? Do you think he's like a World War II vet, maybe?
Oh, I don't
know. But he's like he's the individualist. He's so staunchly against working with anybody else.
Yeah, he cares about like my wife and my child.
Unless they're going to do what he wants them to do, right? So like Tom and Judy will go into the cellar with them.
Yeah.
So he's like,
okay, never mind. Until they decide that they're going to stay upstairs. And then he's like, okay, never mind. Fuck you guys.
Yeah, even though everybody tells him that like this is how we survive, whatever the fuck is going on, we have to work together, and he's like
no. And the only reason he does eventually is because I think it's when they finally find out about those like safe spaces that are being set up.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, okay, we have a goal now other than the cellar.
Right. Because Helen is staying in the cellar just to stay with Karen because Karen's not moving, right?
Yeah, she's all sick.
She's very sick. And I also really like when Harry comes back down to the cellar to like catch her up on everything that happened. And he was like, oh, I heard something on the radio. And she's like, there's a radio?
Like, come on, dude.
I love it. I like, you already said one of them, the way she's like, oh, you have to be right and everyone has to be wrong. Like some of these dunks on Harry are so good. I love when Ben says like, because Harry's like, my little girl is sick, whatever.
Yeah.
And he, like, Ben says something about how unfortunate Karen is to have a father as dumb as Harry. To like, damn, shots fired. And when Helen, like, everything Helen says to him.
Okay, yeah, no, my favorite one that I think
Helen's my favorite character.
Yeah, no, when she's like, we might not enjoy living together, but dying together isn't going to solve anything. And she's like, oh my God, divorce him.
Seriously, just get divorced.
Did no-fault divorce exist yet?
Do you want me to look it up?
No, I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
But also, like, when he's just like standing by the window being grumpy and complaining.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, why don't you do something to help someone?
Yes. Make yourself fucking useful for once in your fucking life.
Yes, Helen. Yes.
Yeah.
I wrote down, Helen is a pip.
Yes, she is a real pip.
Yes, she's really putting her husband in her place, and I think this is because she hates him.
She hates him so much.
Yeah.
She literally is like, my daughter is all I have, while like her husband is right there. And I'm like, yeah, because you hate him.
And you probably hated him before
your daughter was born, yeah.
this ghoul apocalypse.
God. Even when Harry's like, I need to get that gun, and Helen's like, haven't you had enough? Like, she's just so done with it all.
Yeah.
Like, are we really still doing this when there's a fucking zombie apocalypse? Harry.
Yeah. She calls him on his bullshit every single time.
Every time.
And I love it so much.
And that's probably more of that like women's lib gender dynamics coming in of like the nice housewife isn't going to be a nice housewife anymore.
Yeah. When the shit goes down, the literal fabric of society starts to unravel.
Yeah.
And I think we also see that literally with Helen and more like figuratively with Karen.
Yes.
In that, like, once she does find, she's not really in it for much of the film until she finally dies and then comes back and like kills her mother.
Yes.
Actively murders her mother
with a trowel. Yes.
Cabin in the woods.
Yeah. And that's a great shot.
It's a great shot. And then when she like eats her father, and of course, like,
the shot,
it's this sick, which is like an iconic shot of this film, right? It's like the picture when you look up Night of the Living Dead on Max, like it's Karen eating her dad's arm or whatever. You know? And it's like, oh wow, like the younger generation is like literally murdering their parents,
right? Yeah,
you know, and like they have so much rage.
Which is
for their
what
parents.
People are feeling during like the Vietnam War
and like kids getting drafted.
And
yeah.
The theme, the connections, the history.
Yeah.
And like you
and
just
then Ben
know that they were
her.
just thinking when they did that, like, oh, won't it be so taboo?
Yeah, right.
Oh, a child eating her, you know, like some sort of reverse Saturn devouring his children.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
You know,
I love it so much.
Yeah.
And then Tom and Judy are there.
And then Tom and Judy are there.
I think they're also meant there to represent a younger generation, right? They're a younger couple. They're not married yet.
Yeah.
Right.
I do. I mean, I wish Judy had been able to do more. She had a momentary sort of gumption to go out there and then didn't do anything with that.
You know, fulfilling her gender role by helping Helen take care of Karen.
Yeah,
she's helping with childcare. That's what she's doing.
And then Helen and Judy also start taking care of Barbara a little bit and like try to show her empathy. And, I also mentioned this in Cloverfield, the call to mom, where Judy is worried about her parents being worried about her and Tom because they're just local kids and they, you know, their parents are probably wondering where they are. Yeah. And I think Judy and Tom is the one where we most get the like, even though Ben and Harry are the ones fighting about like, do we stay in the cellar? Do we leave or whatever? It's really Judy and Tom, her like, we're safe here, but we're safe here now. Like, what is the actual decision? What is the better choice to make? Do we hole up and hope that somebody will come help us? Mm-hmm. Do we try to fight back, even if it's not really feasible? Like, they're the ones who really have to, like, reckon with that, even though they didn't cause the situation, which I guess is very younger generation of them.
Very. And I they almost kind of feel like NPCs to me.
Yeah.
Like, they're just kind of doing whatever the person in charge wants them to be doing.
And I feel like they had to die because they were the only locals who knew the area. So, like, they were this other moment of, like, hope of, like...
Oh, yeah.
They know...
Oh, we need to get to this city.
Yeah, like, that's where that is. Yeah, I totally know where we are right now. Mm-hmm. This is the old whatever, you know? And so, like, they had to be killed off as just sort of, like, another flash of hope that is taken away.
Absolutely not. No hope for you.
Yeah.
But like they are willing to work together. Like they do understand we have to work together.
Yeah. They want to think about it for themselves. You know, they want to talk it out with each other.
Yeah.
Like Judy's sort of like, I don't know about leaving, you know, and Tom's like, well, this is why we could.
There's that scene where they're talking to each other and it is really nice. Like Tom is talking to Judy like as an equal.
Yeah. They're like reasoning it out together.
Like partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way that is like especially clear after seeing like the Coopers. And it is very like, this is what a modern couple could be.
You could work together. You could actually actually like be equal in status. Yeah.
But then in the end, it doesn't matter what kind of couple you are because they all end up dead.
Yeah, because it still didn't work. And like maybe it doesn't work because Harry fucks it up for everybody.
Right. But maybe it doesn't work because there was never any way for it to work. Because even if you killed all the ghouls, maybe the radiation is still around. Even if you made it to that safe zone, maybe there wouldn't be room for you.
Maybe it's fate.
Like each time they go out to get gas for the car, that doesn't end up work out. Yeah. You know, like it's just sort of like one thing after the other. All the hope keeps getting taken away and taken away and taken away until finally here come the people to save the day. This sheriff's white dude posse, deputized, whatever. And it's like, oh, they're not here to save the day either.
No, nobody's here to save the day.
We get the news reports about how by the morning everything is under control because of this white dude militia with a bunch of guns.
The deputized white men. Yes.
Which is so terrifying to me. I'm like, that is, especially with the news report being like, here are all the ways that you can kill a person. Where I'm like, this is just such a recipe for them to kill a bunch of innocent living people.
Right. And the way that like that first radio broadcast is talking about an epidemic of mass murder.
And then
they're like, how do we combat this violence? More murder. Violence.
Yes. And they're all just so, like you said, they're just really casual and like confident about it.
Yeah. And almost kind of like bored.
Oh, yeah. Blasé.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course they would be because they're a bunch of white dudes with guns. Like they've never been in real danger. Like the danger was never about them.
Yeah. They've got all the power.
And it's like, and they're just killing indiscriminately because they don't, because it just like.
Even though they're being told you can't tell by looking at them.
Yes.
And then they're just going around shooting people.
It's like their goal isn't actually to like save people other than maybe themselves.
Yeah.
Their goal is just to like kill monsters with our guns.
Yeah.
Woo-woo-woo. And like not really care about who they're shooting. Probably especially if it's a black man.
Yeah.
They're like, probably a ghoul. Who cares?
Who cares?
If it isn't.
Put him on the fire.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's fucking insane. Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course there's the scene where Ben is outside after the failed attempt to get gas in the car, right? And he's trying to get back into the house and like Harry decides to like lock him out.
Yeah.
And but then of course Ben does end up getting back in.
And punches the shit out of him.
Punches the shit out of Ben, out of Harry. How does Harry die again? He gets shot. Oh,
that's the
thing.
A
classic tussle with the gun.
Well, it's because Helen and Ben, like the ghouls are finally getting in the house.
Yeah.
And Helen and Ben
Tom and Judy are dead.
Are making themselves useful and trying to board the house back up and not let them get in. Yeah. And Harry is sort of like by the cellar, like maybe he's just gonna go hide on his own. He's holding a gun. Yeah. Like he's just gonna go hide on his own. But instead of helping or even hiding, he's like, I'm gonna use right now to steal that gun from Ben.
Yeah.
And tries to like shoot
resource hoarding. Yeah.
So he like tries to get the gun to shoot at Ben, and Ben shoots him instead.
Yeah.
So like it very much is his own doing.
Yeah.
But also like Ben, I understand why you shot him in that moment, but also like, oh my God, you know that the recently dead rise again.
Right.
You had to get him out of commission, but also like, you're just creating more problems.
Yeah.
Everything we do is only a temporary fix.
Yeah. Or could he have, like, I don't know, knocked him over the head and just knocked him out?
Maybe.
You know?
Or, I mean, gone straight for the headshot.
Right, got to do the headshot. Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it doesn't matter because he gets eaten by his daughter anyway.
Yeah, which I guess is the one, like, what we're supposed to see as, like, a humanizing moment for him is that in that last moment, he does want to be with his daughter. Like, he still does care about her. Like, that really is what it was all about, was protecting her or something.
I'm not buying it.
I didn't really read that. I saw somebody writing about it like that. And I was like, I guess.
No, sorry.
That doesn't really.
For me. But it is interesting the way, like, just, you know, because of his positioning, when he gets shot and he dies and he falls back into the cellar. Like, back to the cellar.
That's where you want it to be, dude.
Yep.
There you are.
You get to be in the cellar.
Don't you know it? There's no escape. There's just your daughter to eat you.
Anything else about these characters?
Oh, I guess I did just want to go back to those what we're saying about like the younger generations and stuff and the Vietnam War and things. Like the thing we didn't say in our little history corner is that those final photos,
those shots,
those final photos that you found like that are so compelling. Would have been very reminiscent of all the photos that were coming over and like the way that
photojournalism in Vietnam.
And like the way that the sheriffs, the deputies, they're all getting filmed on like just sort of like a handheld cam would have been very like the war journalism that was coming back, and that it all is just very like, again, them dealing with the materials that they had and like the limited budget that they had and stuff that ends up being so timely, I guess.
But it's interesting because once we switch from radio to television, right, and then we can see, it's interesting because like these broadcasts are happening like in a news studio, and there are people like, there's like, you know, a man on the scene. And it's interesting that like these people are still like gathering outside, and like you don't consider this to be dangerous. Like it makes everything seem like safe, actually. It's like, oh yeah, like there's an epidemic of mass murder.
Don't worry about it.
The recently deceased are becoming reanimated. And then of course they mentioned that like they are like consuming their victims, you know? But it's just like, but you guys are just like out in the middle of a field right now reporting on this. Like, why aren't you like hunkered down?
I think one of the guys even asked the man on the scene about it, and he's like, I feel pretty safe with all these guys who seem to know what they're doing, killing these things.
And have guns,
you know? And I think it is just sort of that like
of course you feel safe.
That white dude with a gun thing of like, yeah, of course you feel safe.
Nobody's safer.
The danger has never been about you. But it's like, even if you kill all these ghouls with this radiation, you could die of just whatever. And the ghouls will still win because you'll become one.
Right.
Like, I just don't get the hopelessness of this movie. Like, it baffles me. What is the solution? There is no solution, no matter how you cut it.
At least not for those people. Like, there might be a grander solution for like the population in general, because we know it's not happening all over.
Vacating the area.
We know that, again, eastern third of the United States is not happening everywhere.
And I am not familiar with the later canon of how the story progresses.
I'm going to be honest, me neither.
So perhaps the answers are in there waiting for us. And perhaps we will find out one day on this very podcast.
Perhaps. And then we already talked about like the reason for the reanimation, very sci-fi, very space race.
Yeah.
And that fear of radiation, very Cold War, very duck and cover, right? And then you actually keyed me into the fact that the music or the score for the closing credits like came originally from like a Fallout PSA. Yeah. Fascinating.
So like they were thinking about it somewhat enough to have done that.
Did you also catch the Red Scare parallel of like you can't tell just by looking at them? Like someone may be a communist and you can't tell just by looking at them. Right?
Somebody could be a sleeper agent.
Exactly. And
or heaven forbid gay.
Or gay, you can't tell just by looking at them. And then, I think also, I just kind of have one more thought in general that I don't think I've been able to talk about, is that, like, you mentioned it when we were talking about ghouls, is like, you know, we've got that classic scene of Karen killing her mom and eating her dad, right? And, like, it's kind of interesting, like, are we playing with, like, cannibalism as a taboo as well? Like, are we just like hitting every social taboo?
Right. It does seem to be like
of, you know,
that maybe that's part of how they managed to get so much of the historical moment represented, is because they were just hitting whatever taboo they could think of. Maybe. I was thinking about that also, like how it's kind of interesting because we just had our creature summer, hot creature summer, and how we like really love all of the creatures, and like how it's often a thing of like identifying with the villain or with a monster or something, and how that's like really hard to do with the undead when they're like these sort of zombie ghoul undead, because there's like no identity there to identify with. Kind of like, even
they're zombies.
Even the monster in
that traditional voodoo sense
has like an identity. You know, like especially when you read more about it, it's like it's just a scared creature wanting its mom.
A baby.
And you like can feel pity for it or something. With these ones, it's like it's hard to have that connection there, and so instead this movie has all of these other like moments. Like it makes it so much easier for it to become like a metaphor that you can put so much on, because there's like no there. There's no identity in a zombie or a ghoul
that you can build on for the next 60 years.
Right. There's like just so much metaphor you can build into that. It could be a communist Red Scare thing. It could be a space race thing, you know. It could be
Vietnam
a racial
War
thing, a Vietnam thing, a gender thing, you know, subservience, slaves, like all of this stuff can like be put onto this because it's such a blank slate. I don't know. I find it interesting.
Yeah. Man, this is a good movie.
It's a really good movie, guys. How come you never told me about this movie, guys?
I think I watched this movie for the first time maybe like 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a newer one for me. Because I do have it's like very millennial of me. Like I don't always find those black and white movies to be particularly interesting.
Do the other thing.
What's the other thing?
That you spent a long time being afraid of a zombie apocalypse. So I thought maybe you avoided this because it's a zombie apocalypse movie.
That, yeah. No, for a long, long time, zombies were an absolute no-go for me. Yeah.
I didn't even realize this was a black and white movie. The moment I found that out, I was like, oh, I'm even more intrigued.
Well, and
I love a black and white film.
There are like re-releases of it that are colorized.
I don't want that.
No, neither did I. No, the black and white is good.
Yeah, and they use it to good effect. It has that sort of like use of shadow and
but
what is that word, chiaroscuro or whatever.
I think like for me it's like if I am watching a horror movie, I am watching it to be scared. And these black and white movies don't always like they don't age well.
Yeah,
like if you're not in the right mindset, like it is kind of monotonous.
You kind of have to get into that place.
But if you're actually paying attention to what's going on, it's actually terrifying.
Yeah,
like Pan's Labyrinth, right? Yeah. If you're like actually looking at the reality these characters are living in, it's awful.
Yeah, there's like it's almost like with this movie, the like fear factor isn't there in the same way, but there's like an unease and like a dread that can still that like would always work.
And something unexplainable.
Yeah. It's very good. It's a very good movie.
Are you ready to play a game?
Let's play a game.
Let's play a game. So obviously this isn't a slasher, and we've been leaning heavy into archetypes the last few.
Yeah.
Which I'm not mad about.
But
I
think we're trying to branch out more.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know why I thought about this, but I thought it would be fun to like give these characters like class superlatives, like they were in high school, right?
Yeah. Why did you think of that? There's like no connection to this movie for this game to make sense.
Idea.
But I like it.
Yeah. So we just wrote down a couple of them. Like, so those class superlatives, like most likely to. So like most likely to succeed. Most likely to
be famous.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So like most likely to be successful, most likely to become president.
Most likely to become president. The person with the skills to be a good president, Ben.
Most likely to become president,
Harry.
Yeah.
And even him, I don't think his chances are great.
No,
Johnny.
Oh, yeah, because
once he grows up and matures,
he's TV ready. Harry's not TV ready.
Yeah. He's a little too young now, but if he started getting into government, you could see him as a young hot senator. Raising in the Johnny.
Absolutely. But also, Ben, right?
And he's the right amount of cynical.
Yeah.
Johnny, I think, where he could put on the charming face and then be like, it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
And like play the game. I actually think that he could be president.
Okay, Johnny. Too bad he dies first.
Yeah. Sorry, bud.
Most likely to win the lottery and then lose the ticket. Harry to me. He's just like such a putz.
He is. But I don't know if his luck is there enough to even win the lottery in the first place and then lose it. But yeah. Also, though, maybe, and this is maybe a swerve, but Judy, for it being kind of a metaphor for her getting the gumption to go out there and then be completely useless and getting her coat stuck.
Yes.
Like that total turn.
Yeah. I like that one. I like this one because it's not because this movie's from 1968, so the internet didn't exist yet. Most likely to become internet famous.
Oof.
Again, I'm thinking just with like our current political landscape, Harry. I could see him like creating a right-wing podcast that's incredibly popular.
Yeah, I guess in my mind I was thinking of like influencer, and I was like, Barbara's got maybe the looks, but I don't see her having influencer vibes.
Again, like maybe I could see Tom and Judy being like an influencer power couple. Yes.
One of those kind of like almost normcore kind of, where they're just so normal and ordinary, but they're just like so perfect.
Yeah,
and they are with
they just film
their PSLs.
Yeah, they like film like walking their dog. And and meal like prepping for the week.
They own the farm together, and they're like farmers, and they're doing kind of like almost bordering on trad stuff, but like not quite.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Most likely to be late to graduation. Maybe Barbara after she goes into shock.
I think, yeah. I mean, I feel like Johnny just wouldn't show up.
Yeah, he wouldn't even go. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe Barbara.
Yeah. Who do you think has the best hair?
The only hair that stood out to me enough that I like can remember it and pull it to my mind is Barbara with her
Barbara's
like
hair.
Her very 60s sort of
up,
not whatever that is called when your hair goes up too high and defies gravity a little bit. It's got that little bump in the back.
A bouffant.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, but I don't know if that's exactly what that is.
Here, I've got one right here. Here's a picture of Barbara. No, I think she's got like that pretty straightforward 60s hair that like kind of comes down and curls at
the but it just has so much volume, man.
Yeah.
Like, why is it sticking off her scalp so much? You know, all that volume that they always did in the 60s. I just admire it.
Yeah.
I guess is why her hair stayed with me.
Of course, Harry is bald.
I think Helen
has some nice hair. Yeah. Like a nice little updo.
Yeah. I bet if she ever took it down, it'd be like, ooh.
And Judy's hair is actually like really long and quite lovely. Hold on. I don't think we ever do we get a last name for Tom and or Judy, or are they just Judy?
And I also always almost say Tom and Jerry instead of Tom and Judy. So then I have to stop myself and be like, what is her name? It starts with a J.
Oh,
Judy.
yeah. See, Judy's got this gorgeous long blonde hair.
She does have really gorgeous long blonde hair, which is very like, like young generation kind of almost hippie vibes.
Yeah, growing it out. Yeah. Like once she survived, like if she survived this, then she's going to Woodstock, kind of thing.
That's good hair.
That is good hair. So
it might be her.
For me, my favorite hair is Helen's. You like Judy's though?
I think I like Judy's.
Yeah. Also, you know what?
Tell she takes care of it.
Speaking of, I thought Johnny had I thought his hair was good.
Yeah, I mean, he just has it slicked back in that kind of 60s way, but it works for him.
60s dude. Yeah. Okay. Life of the party.
Life of the party.
Who's the life of the party in this cast?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was Tom and Judy.
Tom and Judy together?
Yeah.
I almost wonder if, like, in a different situation, if Ben would be a lot of fun to hang out with.
Oh, yeah. Because you know he's, like, really smart, like, really erudite.
Yeah.
I bet he's... So it would go that way of either being like fascinating conversation and you'd just be like compelled.
Yeah.
Or like, oh my God, there he goes again.
Yeah. Oh God, this guy won't shut up, Yeah.
Just like commanding the room and you're kind of like, okay, but I just want to get some chips. And you're like in front of the dip, like move.
And he's like, talking about like the atrocities and war crimes in Vietnam and Cambodia. And like, we know, dude.
And you could see him having, like a bunch of other young, hip, young people who are just like, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, oh. I could see him in the right circles being like really commanding a room.
Maybe being the life of the party.
Yeah.
What about like last one, class clown?
Class clown.
Who's the class clown?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
But so like that's a classic line, right? Like and my uncle used to say that to me as a kid. It always creeped me out.
Yeah.
But what is amazing is Barbara's response to him. It gets me every single time. She's like, "Stop it! You're ignorant." Yes. And I'm like, I don't understand what that. Is that the word you meant to use, Barbara? Like, ignorance?
I don't know. That's just, sibling anger coming out however it can. I'm going to call you something. You're ignorant. You're an ignoramus.
Yeah, I love it. Class clown. Yeah, probably Johnny. I could also see, like,
I feel like if people got to know Helen, they would realize, like, I bet she has a lot of quiet moments.
Yeah, where she's the quiet kid in the classroom that, like, will say something under her breath, and anybody who hears it was like,
holy shit.
Oh my God, yeah. But no one heard it. Yeah.
So she's not really class clown, but like people who know.
I could also see Harry being a form of class clown. One of the malicious class clowns that like makes fun of the teacher, maybe.
Yeah, or like, just the other students.
Yeah.
Even. Like kind of a bully-ish vibes. Yeah.
Whereas like...
But like in a funny way, and everybody laughs so that they're not like a target.
And Johnny would maybe like target other people, but then I think he'd try to like get some in on himself.
Yeah, I think he's self-deprecating enough that it would be okay.
That you'd be like, okay,
and he would know which people he could like poke fun at and which people like were kind of more off limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
Join us next month.
Oh yes, for our birthday month.
Your birthday month.
Mine is at the end of November. Hers is at the beginning of December. So like we're doing our best. Yeah. And we're going to watch Happy Death Day.
Yeah. From like what? Like 202019 or something? I can't remember.
It's recent-ish.
It's a more recent film.
And a real fave.
Yeah.
We're just going to have a little party.
Thank you as always to Sound Guy Matt. Follow us on Instagram at Deep Thought Shallow Plots.
I'm still in the process of putting more things up on our YouTube, so follow us there at Deep Thought Shallow Plots.
Yep, catch everything on YouTube. I'm watching 31 horror movies in 31 days. I'm doing the 31 for 31. I have for several years now. It's a time-honored tradition for me. So I'll be posting the movies I'm watching to our story on Instagram. So I've been. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been. Yes.
Let's just say I super noticed.
Yeah. Okay. So keep a lookout for that. Watch along with me if you feel so inclined.
I love that.
And until next time, why don't you do something to help somebody?